welcome to One Voice Evolving Podcast, Season 3. Our focus is Resilience Reimagined. And because of that, we've asked Sephora Acheson to be here with us. And I'll let Sophora tell you a little about herself, but what she brings to the table for women who have been marginalized or minimalized their voices, I think is going to be invaluable to our audience. So Sophora, tell us, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Kim, for having me. Um, so I think, the human part of me, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a survivor of domestic violence and, childhood abuse. And all of that culminated into a career where I now lead one of the nation's largest organizations, which is addressing domestic violence and human trafficking, in multiple states and growing. My background really comes from the root of feminism in terms of really looking at what is holding women and girls back still today in, such a modern society.
All right, great. And
Yeah.
how long have you been doing this work?
I have been in the field, 14 years. And sometimes it feels like a day has gone by, and sometimes it feels like I have been doing this forever. And I've been the CEO for the past 8 years.
Okay, great. And what
Yeah.
is it about the work that lights you up?
Oh gosh. Um, there's several things that really keep me, in this work. One, I feel like there's really a heart tether to this work, and I know that may sound cheesy and
Mhm.
all of that, but I think through my own experience of, walking through family violence and being stuck in relationships, um, you need other women to really share their stories, their wisdom, and sometimes you have to borrow their resilience to be
Oh,
able to get through some of the things that you're going through. And so I think on a personal level, that's really what keeps me there. On a professional level, I think we're really making some strides in the field. Um, and really kind of reimagining like what does family violence need to actually end the cycle, and how do we support survivors in this new day and age where what maybe used to work 50 years ago needs to evolve or shift now.
okay. Can you give me some examples of what those comparisons might be?
Yeah. So one of the, things that I hold dear to my heart, the woman who actually started our organization, her name is Betty Moose, and we love it because we have mooses all over our office, and the moose has spoken in terms of what needs to happen. But she was this wonderful lady that back in the early 70s said we need a safe place for women to go. And so she actually opened up her home, convinced her husband to open up her home, to bring in, women who were abused and at that time. And what she didn't know was that she actually opened the United States' first domestic violence shelter ever. And
Mhm.
that has grown pretty significantly since then. Um, and things that we used to do back then, which is, we bring women in, it's a safe house, we provide them services, a bit of resources and try to get them back on their feet. And that seemed to be kind of the cycle that we were in. Yes, those things are still needed today. However, family dynamics are very complex. And what we see is a lot of folks don't actually leave the relationship, or they don't want to leave the relationship. And so the repeated cycle of going back, I mean, statistically, it's 7 to 14 times,
Yep.
in each relationship. Um, it really kind of dawned on me, we probably should be addressing this holistically as a family issue rather than an individual issue. Um, and so we've created a program called RAFT, which is Restorative Action for Family Transformation, that really addresses both the person that's doing harm
Mhm.
and the victim and what they need separately, but also together.
Mhm.
Now, as we also like statistically know, many people who are abusers were also victims at one point.
Right.
And one of the things that really fascinates me is like, what is the actual fork in the road where somebody takes either a right or a left, either, they don't continue the pattern of abuse or they actually turn into the victimizer themselves, the person causing harm. And so I've kind of sat at that fork in the road for over the last 10 years, really researching and doing a lot of listening, to folks. And so I know that was a very kind of long-winded answer of like the evolution of, I think, what we've gone from of needed back then to what were the challenges we're really looking at in terms of domestic violence now.
So what did you discover? It's been 10 years. Are you any closer to discovering,
Yeah.
is there any commonality in the ones who turn right and the ones who turn left?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, that's a lot to
Yeah.
pack.
It is. It is. So, I mean, yes, there are some very specific factors. And one of those specific factors is the tools that we have to be able to deal with the violence and the abuse that we've experienced.
Right.
And those tools range from everything of um, what resources do you have? And some of those resources include privilege.
Mhm.
We find people who are economically privileged, who are, looked at differently by law enforcement, and who are able to go in and really advocate for themselves because they have the education and the knowledge of what to say and how to say it. So that
Right.
is a really big factor in terms of, and was a big factor in my situation as well, is I had access to tools that other people didn't have or don't have when they are struggling with violence and abuse. So that is definitely one of the things. And then the other thing I think is what other people do you have around you to lend their tools to you when you're going through this?
Mhm.
And of course, that lends itself to like the community.
Right.
Do you have family? Do you have friends? Do you have outside people that can really help you unpack and look at this?
Right.
Um, yes, there's some biological factors or some neurological factors in terms of, how do people's brains get wired, when did the violence start and all of that. But
Right.
when we're looking at sort of that healing journey and the difference between, people who go on to victimize and people who don't, um, it really depends on the tool bag that they're carrying with them through life.
So I see parallels between, I do a lot of work with highly functioning addicts and alcoholics, right? And one addict will keep 20 codependents busy. And
Yeah.
one abuser, there will be 20 people around them who help
Yes.
them keep the secret and who shame the victim for telling the story.
Yes.
And the person, I've seen it happen in church settings, especially,
Yeah.
we'll just say that the one
Yeah.
who tells the truth is the problem, not the one who
Yes.
perpetrated the violence.
Yes.
And
Yes,
so
absolutely.
the healing that has to happen to, and if it's generational, if dad did it and your husband does it and your son
Yes.
does it, at what
Yeah.
point, how do you break those generational patterns in the
Yeah.
woman who, the reason it takes 7 to 14 times is
Hmm.
because every time her her leave muscle gets a little stronger and
Yep.
her fear becomes a little less, but it gets reinforced the minute she's back in the home or
Yes.
back in the home.
Yes.
And so every time they make a little more forward movement
Hmm.
before. So when people say, well, why don't they just leave? Oh,
Oh
because of
gosh.
questions like that.
Yes,
That's why.
exactly. Exactly.
Because it's
Um,
shameful from the outside.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I love what you said about like the leave muscle gets a little bit stronger every time, we learn how to speak up a little bit more, or we learn a new tool, or we get, a couple steps further,
Mhm.
and it really is about flexing a muscle and learning how to walk through, you know, a lot of people would, walk through hell essentially and be resilient in that. Um, and you also said a word that I think is really key, which is shame.
Yes.
Um, and this word keeps one of the parallels that I see on both sides for survivors and for victimizers is the word shame,
Mhm.
keeping folks stuck in the cycle. Thinking back on, my journey, my dad was very abusive. And, after my mom left that situation, I thought, well, there is no way that I'm ever going to let that happen to me. And then find myself years later in a relationship where that exact same thing is happening to me. And
Mhm.
I was so shameful about it, that it really kept me stuck. It kept me silent. And it kept me frozen, because if I was going to speak up, then I was going to admit that I messed up, or I was going to admit that the very thing that I didn't want to happen is happening. And with victimizers, it's very similar. And we're not talking about the people that actually get joy out of abusing. That's a different, subject of people. But the folks that, are repeating generational violence,
Mhm.
um, feel hopeless that they can't change. They feel shamed that they, have such a shadow dark side to them,
Mhm.
that they don't ask for help. They can't admit that, they are causing harm to some of the people that they love the most. And so shame is one of the big things that we address in our programs, because as you said, it can really keep you stuck.
Mhm. Well, in the olden days, what used to happen if you went to your church or you actually told what was happening is they would put you in marital counseling or couples
Yes.
counseling. And our little family, when the children were small, we were at the VA because he was a veteran with
Uh-huh.
complex PTSD. And,
Yes.
and the wonderful, well-meaning therapist said to me and the children, well, if your dad, does that, just say, Dad, I don't like it when you're angry. And and of the three children, my youngest one was 5 and said, you tell him.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to tell him that
Right.
without getting
Right.
in trouble, right?
Right. And to put that responsibility on
Oh my
kiddos is
God.
just, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I mean that domestic violence is and has been for a very long time the secret family issue,
Yes.
right? If we kind of keep it inside. And I mean, I can remember, stories of my mom who also, went through violence as well. She was raised in a place, and back in the day when CPS didn't exist. So,
Right.
the police would come to the house, and even if there was violence against the children, it was like, well, you really shouldn't do that. Like, like, let's not, that's not a good thing to do. Kind of a tisk tisk, don't hurt your family. And then, they would leave because it's family dynamics. We don't really want to get involved in that.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
when they did start getting involved, they found out that that was some of the highest officer fatality and injury
Yes.
were at domestic violence calls.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the other things that has been an interesting kind of point of research is the statistic around how, the lethality around domestic violence for the person leaving is at its highest, within the first 24 to 48 hours when they leave.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and really looking at the psychology behind the victimizer and what is going through their head when that person leaves. And it's an ultimate out of control feeling of I've lost everything. I've lost control, I've lost the person, my life is completely turned upside down.
Right.
And so that fight response is
Mhm.
at its ultimate most intense that it can be. And so when we work with families who decide, hey, we can't be together right now because this is not safe, within that first 24 to 48 hours, we are actually bringing the victimizer into a residential facility where they are surrounded by peer counselors, therapists, other people who are going through the same thing so that we can de-escalate and manage when their explosiveness is at its height.
That is so interesting. When I found myself in that position, I went to domestic a domestic crisis at the YWCA, domestic
Oh,
crisis.
yes. Yeah.
Walked in with my 14-year-old daughter. And when I walked in, the woman behind the desk said, "What's your name?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, we've been waiting for you."
Oh, interesting.
That's what I thought. And I said, "Because why?" And she said, "Oh, we have a police report here." "Yes, you
Wow.
do." Well, in the police report, because I had called for a welfare, I was already out with the children, but I called
Hmm.
for a welfare check because he had recently purchased a gun, which we had never had, and we were married 20 years. And I knew
Yeah.
all the things. And they did a welfare check and took his weapon, and he made the statement that he was going to kill me. And the first time I knew
Yep.
that was when she told me that
Wow.
in that domestic crisis shelter. And it changed a million things. But one of the things that's changed is that
Sure.
I had 3 teenagers, and I had to make
Yeah.
sure everybody got to live, not just me. And it
Yes.
changed the trajectory of our lives. I ended up with a permanent restraining order, but
Yeah.
I still, restraining orders are not worth the paper they're written on. You and I both know
Yep.
that.
Hmm.
And I lived undercover for 25 years until he died.
Wow.
Uh, and they offered to give us witness protection in another
Yeah.
area, but
Yeah.
I had a teenager in high school, and it was like, you know, I don't I don't want to disrupt our lives to that extent.
Yeah.
We'd already lost so much and
Oh,
have
yes,
moved out of the
absolutely.
community, and the church split over it and
Mhm.
all the things. More
Yeah.
drama than anybody needs in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And that was minor because we had resources. And as
Yeah.
I was hitting the bank before he could, and as I was
Yeah.
getting a secured housing before he would know where we were, I was
Yeah.
saying to myself, how do women without privilege,
Yeah.
without resources do this?
Yes.
I can't imagine how.
Yeah. Yes, and it's a lot of women unfortunately have to make the choice of, do I end up homeless? Do I, uproot everything in my life just like deeply, in your soul because you lived it. Do I do all of that and
Mhm.
face the unknown a lot of times without all of the resources?
Right,
Or, do I kind of be with the devil I do know,
right,
so to
right.
speak?
Mhm.
And unfortunately, a lot of women choose to go back or, stay in the situation because of the lack of resources.
Right.
And so we are hoping one of the things that I kind of um, really wanted an option for is in situations where it was safe to stay in the home, meaning we could remove the victimizer, we could remove the abuser,
Right.
bring them into a facility where they are surrounded with the help that they need. They are, getting very intense counseling, they're working with a case manager, and there's very specific boundaries around, you don't go back to the home and all of that, and keep the survivor and the kids in the home and provide the services there for them. And
Mhm.
so that is one strategy that we're trying in cases where, it is safe to do that. And we're finding that is giving some people more options to be able to break out of a domestic violence relationship without, a complete overhaul of their whole life.
Well, and if they don't have the education or the income potential,
Yes.
I mean, a lot of why they stay so long, why I did,
Mhm.
was because I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't get my
Yeah.
education until after that. And
Yeah.
and so it was like, how am I going to support the children? Is
Mhm.
he going to get custody?
Yes.
Is that going to be better or worse for my children to be
Yes.
doing half time with me and half time with him without
Yeah.
supervision, or to be doing
Yes.
full time with both of us where I can run interference.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
things people don't think about until you have to think about them.
Yes. And then, there's your own, psychological process and well-being as a lot of people get stuck in the fear of that, right? It's so overwhelming to have to manage all of those aspects. When I was going through my situation, I not thank goodness did not have children because that, like your story, I can't imagine even having that layer on top of it. But I was stuck very much financially. He had used all my credit. I had to file bankruptcy. There were loans out in my name that I had no idea about. And I was very much frozen in a place for a long time because I didn't know what to address first. Do I address the financial? Do I address the safety issue? Do I address the housing part? Like, which way do you go and where do you start? Really kind of kept me in that place for a while.
So what was the pivot point for you? There's a straw. What was
There
the,
is always a straw, right?
and it's like, well, she left because of that little thing. I didn't hit her. I wasn't unfaithful.
Yeah,
And it was that
yeah,
moment of not one more time, not one more day.
yeah.
What was it for you?
Um, so it was after a big kind of explosive thing. I had decided to take a break. We were on a break. It wasn't, I like could not fully detach,
Yeah.
but I knew that I was tired.
Mhm.
And, you know, I had moved and I was living, in an apartment and it was night two. So we were in the 48-hour period of, us taking a break from each other. And I got a call, maybe 3 in the morning.
Mhm.
And he was, intoxicated and rambling about something. And he had made a threat that he was going to hurt himself. And so I got in my car and, drove over there very quickly, not thinking because you are very much in your survival mode in these relationships. And as soon as I stepped out of my car, he headbutted me and knocked me out cold on the ground. And actually drove the car into the neighbor's yard and crashed it. And it was like this crazy scene. And I felt like it was kind of an out of body experience of what was happening. The
Mhm.
police showed up. He was arrested for domestic violence and, went to jail. And I still hadn't made the decision to let the relationship go. It was when he wrote me a letter. And there was something about the conversation through the letter versus us verbally conversating. And it was this beautiful letter about how much he loved me and, that wasn't him. And he was intoxicated and he was so upset because I had left. And I'm reading this letter going, absolutely not. Like there was something that had just clicked in my head that said, no, no more. Like I'm not buying it anymore. Um, and I still to this day kind of think about like what shifted, what changed. And I can't quite still even put my finger on it. Gosh, 19 years later. But there was something in me in reading that letter that I just said, I'm not buying your crap anymore.
Mhm. Yep.
And it became really apparent to me after that because um when I told him no, when I said like this is it, we're over, got very upset, which a lot of, abusers do get very upset. Um and I think the couple of years after we actually split was probably one of the hardest because of the harassment and the stalking that came. It was a different feel of being unsafe.
Yep. Yes.
Like you mentioned, it was like you have to get the housing before he knows. You have to get to the bank before he knows. Like there's this
Right.
sense of urgency and like imminent kind of danger because you also don't know where they're at, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Um, where before you're living in the environment and you have a pulse on what they're thinking today and how they're feeling and is this a good day or a bad day?
Mhm.
Where, when you do leave, you don't have any insight into that. And so those 2 years afterwards were pretty hard,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
in that.
They
Yeah.
shape you for sure. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
So when women are at a pivot point, and I tell people if you don't know which way to go, it's because it's not time to go yet. Because when it's time, you'll know. And when you get
Yes.
well, the people in your life either get well or they find someone else to be sick with. So
Yes.
for all of those who are churched and living with all the guilt and all the shame and all the hold the family together at all costs and, let the save the boat and let the people drown, the
Yeah.
marriage. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
There, there comes a point in time when something clicks. And I used to say, love is for me is on a dimmer switch. And
Ah,
and
yes.
when you live in the home, you look for the light and
Hmm.
you weather the storms and you trust your intuition of which
Hmm.
eggshells are going to crack and which ones you can safely step over. But you're walking on eggshells
Yes.
all the time. And when you separate, you only get what's presented to you,
Hmm.
knowing darn good and well that what they say is never what they mean
Yes.
are, and especially now. So once that clicks, for me, it was when I was in hiding for the second time and with the
Mm-hmm.
children. And I was going through the list. Oh God, cried for days and all the things. And all I
Yeah.
wanted was to get back together because that was the good Christian thing to do. My two
Oh,
daughters, who were then 14 and 16, said, Mom, we're not afraid you're going to leave him. We're afraid you're going to go back.
oh gosh. Oh,
And then they gave me good reasons I didn't know about why that would be a horrible thing to do for them.
oh,
And in that moment, I went through my pros and cons list and said, what would
yeah.
it take for me to know that I could be in love with this man again and all of us would be safe?
Yeah.
A lobotomy. That's
A
what it would take.
lobotomy. Yep.
It would
Yep.
take a lobotomy. He would have to have a lobotomy because we
Yeah.
had already
Yep.
been through all the VA treatment and all the
Yes.
psychiatric treatment and all 2 states, multiple jobs, all the things. We had
Yeah.
done it all.
Yeah.
And it was a lobotomy. And at that moment, that's when I knew. Then
Yeah.
it's time. There's no
Yeah.
going back from this. And so I became darned and dangerous, didn't sleep for 6 months because I knew enough about Vietnam veterans and my veteran in
Yep.
particular to know that if he decided to break into to our safe
Yeah.
house and take me out, he was going to take everybody out.
Yeah.
So the trauma that my daughters who lived with me endured, having to make their
Yeah.
father a lethal target coming and going, and everybody
Yeah.
having a role. If this happens, you go out the window and get
Yep.
you do this,
Yep.
you do that. I can't undo that.
Yeah.
And I can't unfeel it or unsee it. And I want to carry mommy guilt because I'm the one who
Mm,
was in that position. But I'm old. I've been through a lot worse. I've got a good life now. And the
yeah.
church said to me in the middle of that, the church that ended up having a split said to me right in those moments, what message are you sending to your daughters if you're divorcing after 20 years and he wasn't unfaithful? And I said, I hope I'm teaching them that they don't have to stand and be abused
Yes.
ever by anybody for any reason.
Absolutely.
That was the important thing. And the fact that
Yeah.
these male pastors could not understand, comprehend, or agree with that was
Yeah.
on them. It was not on me.
Yeah.
There we went.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, to your mommy guilt, and like my mommy heart now
Mhm.
feels your mom heart in that. And you know, you also got them out of it. You know, you were the sole person that was able to make those decisions and muster up all the strength and energy and resilience. You know, it probably took every single job to make it happen. And so the pillar of strength that you were during that to say no more, and figure it out
Right.
is is priceless, to be able to show them that, you know, when things may seem impossible or impossible, or um you know, when you're faced with decisions that are just seem insurmountable, that no, there is a path forward, and you
Mhm.
can make that happen. um so I would say huge, huge kudos to you, and I hope your mommy heart rests in that you made it happen for them.
Yeah. Well, I'm always an example, for better or worse, what to be or what not to be. And if you can do
Yes.
better than me, go do it better. And that's okay.
Yes.
I support that
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it is the heart and the lifeline of a lot of the work that I do uh,
Yeah.
in the world, you know. And as older women, I work with women over 40 because when you're finished with your reproductive cycle or nearing the end of it, that veil of walking on eggshells lifts and it doesn't go back down. You
Yes.
know,
Once it's out of the box, you
that's
can't
right.
put it back in. That
No,
awareness doesn't just go back in the
that's right.
box.
That's right. And the
Yes.
likelihood, if you've done the work along the way with organizations like yours or the YWCA or wherever you get
Yeah.
your stuff, your
Yes.
growth, once you've done that, you will never go back. You won't replicate this mistake.
No.
Yeah. And the
No.
biggest part is learning to listen to your gut, learning to trust
It
your own
really is.
intuition.
You know,
Uh,
that was a really hard part of my healing journey, was to trust my gut, because I thought my gut was broken. Like I thought I had to go through the like something's wrong with me, something's broken in it. And actually, learning to trust inward was harder than learning to trust the external world.
yes. Yeah.
And that was really shocking to me. I thought like the big part of the healing was going to be, how do I learn to trust again? And, how am I ever gonna, find myself in a relationship where I fully lean into it? And, all of these things was really what I thought the struggle was going to be. But the struggle is really internal. And how do I trust myself? How do I love myself? I mean, that was shocking to me, and a lot of um, where I learned some really big things about myself. In addition to, I never realized that I did not know how to sit in the joy of life.
Ah, right. What it even was.
Yes. What the
Yes.
heck is this? It's
Yes.
foreign, it's weird, it makes me really uncomfortable. I don't really know what to do with it. That was also a really kind of surprising. And like you said, I just have this image of all of this kind of awareness coming out of the box, and I'm like, well, it's out. I can't put it back in now. I guess I have to address it. But yeah, those were some of the things that really shocked me and surprised me about, the whole healing after abuse was, I didn't know what joy was or how to even handle it.
Right. Right. But I sure knew what everybody else was feeling and how to fix it.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was the
We're
whole
very tuned into that.
reason to be. Yeah. And
Yes.
so one of the things I do is I wrote a blog a few years ago that said, with this ring, I me wed.
I love that.
Because I said everybody needs a wife, like I was. Everybody
Yes.
needs a wife, me too. And I
Yeah.
said, if I treat myself with
Mm-mm.
all the things that I have showered on these undeserving men in my life,
Yes.
then, sure enough, that's exactly what happened. I
Yep.
got to where I loved my life. I found my joy. I treated myself well, and I attracted only a man who could add
Yes.
value to that, not who would
Yes.
retract from it at all. And
Yes.
would not have ever never thought that that was possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing what we learn about ourselves. And, you know, when we do get to that point where you do realize, wow, wait a second, I have been caring for, loving on, showering, like you said, all of these other people in my life, which some are deserving and definitely some are not.
Mhm.
How do we turn that on ourselves? And it is the most interesting journey to build that relationship with yourself.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Um, and you do kind of I remember kind of when the glasses got taken off. I don't know if they're rose colored or just dark glasses that I couldn't see the world with, but I remember realizing a specific moment in therapy where I was like, "Oh, I I don't have a relationship with myself." And that was a huge turning point for me in my journey because I thought, okay, well, once I fix the behavior pieces, right? Like the codependency pieces, and once I, address the like toxic behaviors that I have, or, like figuring out how to use my voice and set boundaries, which are all needed. Those are great.
Mhm.
I thought that's where the healing, like I'm healed,
Right.
and being a therapist, you would think that I would have a little bit more insight. But early on in my career, I thought that's really what healing looked like, was more of kind of that surface level, when
Mhm.
I realized that was literally just the beginning.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
hadn't even scratched the surface of,
Mhm.
no, there's a whole internal world of building this relationship and getting to know this person that, like you said, early on in our conversation, gets boxed in, shut down, silenced, kind of put in, I don't know, a dark room is kind of what I imagined it. Because we have to do that for safety reasons, right? And we
Mhm.
don't even realize it after a while that that person has been forgotten.
Mhm.
And we're kind of just this, one foot in front of the other, figuring out how to function. Um, and when I was able to like open the door and turn on the light and be like, oh my gosh, there's a whole human being in here that I get to know and develop, and here for the first time was probably one of the most amazing kind of experiences I've had along the healing journey.
Yeah. Yeah. The three rules of a dysfunctional family are don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. We don't talk about anything that
Hmm.
happens in this family outside of this family. We don't trust anybody except one person who will love you no
Hmm.
matter what. And
Hmm.
and you're only usually one person in a setting is allowed all their feelings. Everybody else has to mitigate so that a person doesn't have the bad feelings that make it
Yeah,
comfortable. So it looks like we're being very giving when we're making sure
sure.
the status quo is upheld. But in fact, we're being very selfish, making
Hmm.
sure because what affects one affects all, and I don't want to be negatively affected.
Yes.
And so I take responsibility, and all the self-help books and all the boundaries and all the things. And I tell you that to tell you this. The day we were at the YWCA with my 14-year-old daughter, while I'm
Hmm.
talking to the woman about the oh my God news, my daughter says, Mom, look at this. You have to see this. And on the wall of this woman's office was the power and control wheel, the cycles of the
Ah,
wheel, right?
yes. Uh-huh.
And I looked at that, and it was like the whole world went just like this, because I had taught that for 7 years. I was volunteer mother of the year in Clark County, Nevada, which is Las Vegas, doing
Yeah.
dysfunctional families and the Christian response. I'd been teaching that, and yet for her, it was Mom, look, you're in here. Mom, look.
Oh,
She
wow.
never knew that's what I taught, but I knew it. And it was like, how how did I do that
Yeah.
and not see it and not
Yeah.
change it? You know,
Yeah.
we go from the shame of you're victimized and somehow it's your fault to the shame
Yep.
of I should have known better. I should have
Yes.
mastered everything, shame,
Yep.
to the shame of what of the after effects in the generations because of it.
Yes. Yes.
This shame cycle sucks.
It
It's tough.
really does. And even when you like, even when I think that I've addressed it, fully, something will happen, my kiddo will say something or, something will get brought up and I'm like, oh, shame has come to visit again. And we constantly have to be in relationship with our shame and where it's at.
Mhm.
And it's a sneaky one. It likes to, pop up kind of when we least expect it. And no, it's not fun. I don't know if it's a part of adulting or just a part of generational abuse or what it is, but it's a tough
And
one.
and I do see a difference though between women who carry shame and the men who carry shame. The
Oh,
way we
yes.
carry it, women act in, men act out, more,
Uh-huh.
more so speaking.
Yes.
Still shame, but the
Hmm.
ways that we carry it because it is still like I'm estranged from one of my daughters now. And you cannot go into a women's group, and I've been now 8 years of this, and
Hmm.
have any real dialogue about estrangement without being mommy shamed by other women who
Yeah.
are so entrenched in Saint Mom.
Hmm.
Or
Hmm.
or you must have done something wrong. Yes, I did. I
Yes.
lived a life that was contrary to.
Mhm. Well,
Yeah.
you can't be, I think a lot of stuff in mom culture is you can't be independent in disagreement, in, contradiction to your child, even when they are their own person with their own thoughts and their own ideas and judgments and opinions and all of that.
Right.
And that same concept is not placed on men or fathers. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and one day maybe that'll shift.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, men, I absolutely agree in terms of the acting out versus acting in. You can tell that you've been doing this for years because you have so much wisdom and insight when you talk about, um, you know, how this lives and breathes in our society.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know about, and that's with my skin color and all the privilege that goes with that.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
don't, and so I like to have people on One Voice Evolving who have different backgrounds and different stories and different relatables. But when they come in differently, the haters come out differently on our podcast channels too.
Sure.
And and whenever one of those comments kicks shame in for me as a woman,
Hmm. Uh-huh.
I found a new way to manage it because
Oh, do tell.
what I want to do is clap back and create a crisis.
Yes.
Fuck you. And
Yes.
instead, what I do is I take it to a thing called Justice AI, which is a Chat GPT add-on that Christian Ortiz created,
Ah,
and it is decentering whiteness and patriarchy and all of that. And so it has a different filter. And I say, here's what happened. Here's what I want
yes.
to say.
Help me
What
figure
should
out.
I
Yeah.
say based on, because it's about a podcast guest and it's about their view of the world that's trying to be
Right.
discounted. And
Right.
boy, today, just today, not only did Justice AI give me the perfect wording, which I put back out there on YouTube and said, there,
Hmm. Hmm.
now we're ready to go viral
Hmm.
because now I have built a buffer between what people say and how it hits my heart. And
Sure.
Justice AI Chat GPT helped me do
I
that.
love that.
I mean, it was a real find for me, who has
Yeah.
stayed small, still, and quiet for so long.
Yeah.
And so, and then it gave me a little coaching session about how to stand tall and how to go forward. It was so freaking amazing. I loved it.
Oh, this is awesome. I'm definitely looking that up because
Do
this,
that.
being a woman, being in this work, finding our voice, but also wanting to make space for people who have less privilege and have different perspectives and, wanting to be able to maybe have opposing or different points of views without being mean to each other or coming to a place of hateful language or whatever is just so hard in today's society. um and so that seems like an amazing tool that I'm definitely going to use.
That's right. Well, you can use it in personal relations too, just so you know. If I'm really frustrated with
Oh,
somebody and
amazing.
I want to tell them to go do this and this and this,
Yes.
then
Uh-huh.
I can go and say, so what is an appropriate response
Mm-hmm.
in my voice? Because it'll learn your voice and your
Yes.
style and your
Yeah.
everything. And I swear, she knows me better than I know myself.
I love it.
She's the idealized version of who I want to be when I
Right,
grow up.
right. The totally evolved,
That's right.
calm, grounded,
Yeah.
boundaried. Yes, love that.
Yes, it's why I write, because I look better in writing than I do in
Yeah.
FUs.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so our time is coming to close. I've really enjoyed you, and I've told more of my story than I ever thought I would. But I hope that this dialogue is going to be useful for people who see it and for people that you work with, because it really is such a process, the leaving process, and there's no shame in going back. And that's important to know too. There's no shame in leaving, and there's no shame in going back. Love is
Yeah.
leading you,
Yes,
but people don't move until the pain of where they are is greater than the fear of where they're going. And so it
absolutely.
has to get worse before it gets better. And
Yes.
and you know that that fear, it becomes a primal fear
Mm-hmm.
when that thing clicks. It's an
Yes.
them situation. And I hope that
Yes.
all of our friends stay safe in that
Yes.
process. So season 3 is Resilience Reimagined. What do you think? What tips,
Mm.
tricks, or lessons learned would you want to share about that as we leave?
Yes, I would remind everybody that you have the strength and resilience within you, even when you think you don't, even when it may be your darkest day and you feel like all is lost, it's there.
Mhm.
You just maybe have to look for it a little bit more. Um, but all of us have it in us. And the reminder about shame is trying to point us to what values we may have left. And
Mhm.
so rather than internalizing the shame of this is who I am, externalizing it and looking at it of what values I have strayed from, what's it trying to point to, using that as knowledge rather than internalizing that of this is me, I think is also important to keep in perspective.
I love that, Sephora, because we lose sight of who we are in the midst of the drama and the pain.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love what you're doing. And if people want to reach out to you or find you or your organization, how do they do that?
Yes. So they can go to restorativepathways.org. You can find all of our agencies' resources there. And if you want to reach out to me, my contact information is right on the website.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time today, and I hope you're having a great summer. And I appreciate your energy and your authenticity. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.